the week. Today is Friday, January 27th. This week, our code of conduct is to maintain cleanliness and conditions of vehicles and equipment. Anything to add on that, Mr. Dow?
Yeah, it allows us to have a dependable fleet because our equipment is something that we rely on huge to complete our projects, besides our brain power, right? It also adds to the bottom line. This stuff, look at what a pickup truck costs. Whoever would have thought we would have been paying this kind of money for some of this equipment. It adds to the life of that, and over time, it probably can extend the life of this stuff so that we can have it for a few more years. It's also an indication of our culture. It looks good and it looks professional.
Well said. So another 7 days, so our day count's up to 222 days without a recordable injury. Unfortunately, we did have a first aid related case happen on Wednesday, back related situation. So a good, healthy remember about good ergonomics and asking for help when you need to lift heavy objects and making sure that we're lifting with those legs and rotating our feet accordingly. Again, that's why we have Beth on here today to also talk a little bit about wellness, and she's going to talk about our wellness program. But again, it's a great program for us, and we're going to highlight that more. One last thing I have before we're going to kick it over for our presentation today is we are rebooting the safety committee. A chairman has been announced. That's Mr. Ben Heath, who will be taking that role. And then the next thing we got to do is start filling that committee out. So we're looking for volunteers to join it. So please get with your foreman or whoever is in charge of that chain of command and let them know that you're interested so we can start tallying up and putting a group together to start talking about some low-hanging fruit and some things to consider for 2023. So with that said, Beth, I'm going to kind of move over to your presentation here on hypertension and why we care.
Great. Yeah. Well, good morning, guys. And if there's some ladies there, my name is Beth Schiller. I'm the owner of Champlain Medical Urgent Care. I'm a nurse practitioner, and I used to be an engineer. So I'm trying to relate to you guys in terms of understanding hypertension and why it's important to us. I'm going to move to the next slide. So if you can just think of your heart as a pump, right? And then the hose is all those lovely arteries that's running around in your body. Hypertension essentially means that heart is pushing too hard to get through the hoses that are throughout your body. And specifically, there are those really small hoses that are around your heart that helps things pump. So, and what I want to do is try, so that I'm not explaining it, is we're going to show like a 4-minute video. I think it will be helpful just to understand what blood pressure is, and then it'll be easier to talk about how we control it and what we want to do to manage it. So kick it off there, Matt.
Yep. Everybody, please try to turn up their volumes on their phone. And then if for some reason the sound's not working, please let me know, but this should work.
If you lined up all the blood vessels in your body, they'd be 95,000 kilometers long. And every day, they carry the equivalent of over 7,500 liters of blood, though that's actually the same 4 or 5 liters recycled over and over, delivering oxygen and precious nutrients like glucose and amino acids to the body's tissues. All that blood exerts a force on the muscular walls of the blood vessels. That force is called blood pressure, and it rises and falls with the phases of the heartbeat. It's highest during systole, when the heart contracts to force blood through the arteries. This is your systolic blood pressure, when the heart is at rest between beats. blood pressure falls to its lowest value, the diastolic pressure. A typical healthy individual produces a systolic pressure between 90 and 120 millimeters of mercury, and diastolic pressure between 60 and 80. Taken together, a normal reading is a bit less than 120/80. The blood traverses the landscape of the body through the pipes of the circulatory system. In any plumbing system, several things can increase the force on the walls of the pipes: the properties of the fluid, extra fluid, or narrower pipes. So if the blood thickens, a higher pressure is needed to push it, so the heart will pump harder. A high salt diet will lead to a similar result. The salt promotes water retention, and the extra fluid increases the blood volume and blood pressure. And stress, like the fight or flight response, releases hormones like epinephrine and norepinephrine that constrict key vessels, increasing the resistance to flow and raising the pressure upstream. Blood vessels can usually handle these fluctuations easily. Elastic fibers embedded in their walls make them resilient. But if your blood pressure regularly rises above about 140/90, what we call hypertension, and stays there, it can cause serious problems. That's because the extra strain on the arterial wall can produce small tears. When the injured tissue swells up, substances that respond to the inflammation, like white blood cells, collect around the tears. Fat and cholesterol floating in the blood latch on too, eventually building up to form a plaque that stiffens and thickens the inner arterial wall. This condition is called atherosclerosis, and it can have dangerous consequences. If the plaque ruptures, a blood clot forms on top of the tear, clogging the already narrowed pipe. If the clot is big enough, it can completely block the flow of oxygen and nutrients to cells downstream. In vessels that feed the heart, that will cause a heart attack when oxygen-deprived cardiac muscle cells start to die. If the clot cuts off blood flow to the brain, it causes a stroke. Dangerously clogged blood vessels can be widened by a procedure called an angioplasty. There, doctors thread a wire through the vessel to the obstructed site, and then pass a deflated balloon catheter over the wire. When the balloon is inflated, it forces the passageway open again. Sometimes a rigid tube called a stent is placed in the vessel to help hold it open, letting the blood flow freely to replenish the oxygen-starved cells downstream. Staying flexible under pressure is a tough job for arteries. The fluid they pump is composed of substances that can get sticky and clog them. And your typical healthy heart beats about 70 times a minute, and at least 2.5 billion times during an average lifetime. That may sound like an insurmountable amount of pressure, but don't worry. Your arteries are well suited for the challenge.
Oh, great. Hope you guys enjoyed that. And it was in a way that is relatively easy to understand. As a clinician, we don't always spend that time to break it down into some very easy ideas so that it makes a lot more sense to you and then you can respond to it. So how do we know if we have high blood pressure, or as we call it, hypertension? And you can move on, Matt, to the slide after the video. Great. Unlike your car, right? Your car will tell you if your oil's low, right? We don't have anything like that in our bodies. So your blood pressure, it can be 120/80, which is wonderful. It can be 190/100, which is not so good. And you have, generally speaking, no no actual way. There's no light bulb that goes off of telling what your blood pressure is and whether or not you're at risk for what we just learned was a heart attack or a stroke. So the way you learn more or you find out is, one of the things you can do is buy a blood pressure cuff. Nowadays, you can get them at Amazon, your local pharmacy, and I certainly suggest the ones that go around your bicep and not the ones that go on your wrist. If you don't want to go and buy a blood pressure cuff, my suggestion is to drop into your local pharmacy and put your arm in that lovely machine and get a reading every once in a while, once a month maybe. And as long as that pressure, the top number is under 140 and or the bottom number is under 90, that means that things are good, and you can, continue to move on and not be concerned about your blood pressure. But again, if you don't measure it once in a while, you're never going to know if it's increasing. So go ahead and move to the next slide.
Can I say, I'm
Yes.
actually going to ask Matt Orzalak, do we have a blood pressure cuff in the safety room?
We do, yeah. We
So
have
we
one
can also-
available.
Yep.
Matt, is that an automated cuff for you guys?
It is. Push a button, push start, it fills
Okay.
right up and does the kind of slowly drops the pressure and it counts
The
the
beats.
beats. Yeah.
Yep. Great. So
Okay.
that's another option is right there at the shop. You can do a blood pressure reading, and it can help you in terms of managing your own blood pressure. So what's some other ways in terms of blood pressure and other things is to join the wellness program. ECI offers an amazing program for you guys, and it's free, like really free, to all the employees. And all you need to do is once a year at a minimum, come and visit us. We'll do an evaluation with you. We'll talk to you about a whole bunch of things. We'll do a little blood work. And then beyond that one visit, you're welcome to come back for the remainder of the year. If blood pressure is an issue, we'll evaluate it and talk with you about the options. Other things we saw in the video had to do with cholesterol. If you have a large, your values of cholesterol are really high, that again puts you at risk for that heart attack or stroke. Talk to you about that. We'll talk to you about diabetes and what that is and why it's important. And then other things, you can use us for any kind of walk-in type of issues, whether it's aches and pains, other illnesses, or any other concerns that you have about your health. So I would highly recommend the program. I think it's an amazing program that ECI is putting on for you, and take advantage of it. Next slide. Okay, so now here's where I'm not sure if you want to remember to treat yourself as good as you treat your vehicle or your sled or your side-by-side. I'm assuming that you change your oil on a regular basis, so why not come visit us and we'll do a wellness exam, and it'll be like your own oil change. Feel free to give us a call, set up an appointment. We're not that scary, and we're there as mentors and guides for all of you in terms of your overall health.
Oh, Beth, hopefully you're just going to check my oil, not change my oil.
No, we're not changing oil. Sometimes we take a little bit to make sure that there's not a high amount of lead.
Yep. Okay.
Let's treat ourselves as well as we treat our equipment. Let's take some pride. Thank you, Beth. That was awesome.
Yeah, thanks, Beth.
All right, Ken, take it away.
Okay, is Phil Murdoch still on? I see his P there on my screen.
He is.
Hey, welcome back.
And we got Ken. Greg is also up this
Oh,
morning.
I see. There's Ken. Yeah.
Good morning.
Ken.
It's good to see you guys.
Ken and
Yeah.
Phil. Good seeing you. Of course, we're bringing these two folks on because they, they're recipient of our charity giving, the employee charity giving. What was it? $62.50, right? $6,250. Which was essentially from the employees. So and it was divided 4 ways between 4 charities and evenly. So I'll turn the floor over to you guys. And why don't you introduce yourselves real quick too?
Yeah, all right. Thanks, Ken. I think if any of you have been on for the last several years, I've come on and about this time of year and been able to be a part of your safety brief, and it reminds me so much of the way we used to start our day over at the Air Guard. I was a F-16 pilot and was with the Air Guard for about 32 years. And every day we would start with a safety brief, and that's how we kicked it off. So it's really your culture reminds me so much of what I went through for 30 years at the Air Guard. I've got we brought Ken Gregg on board too. He's been also at this meeting a couple times. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna talk a little bit about the foundation, but before I do that, I just wanted to give you Ken's going to give an update on the Guard. He's the Deputy Adjutant General, working with General Knight as the Adjutant General he's been doing that for, I think, what, 4 or 5 years now, Ken?
That's correct.
And I worked with Ken over at the Air Guard for about almost my whole career. And he's still going. I retired about 12 years ago. So Ken, if you'd want to give a couple minutes on the state of the Guard and where we're at with deployments and the state of how things are going there.
Yeah, happy to. And again, thanks for having us. And again, on behalf of the soldiers and airmen of the Vermont National Guard, thank you for your continued support. Real quick, regarding Army, Army stuff, the brigade, the Mountain Brigade, by May-June timeframe this past summer, just completed a 1-year deployment to several theaters of operation overseas. The deployments were very successful. A matter of fact, one particular unit, it was very interesting. They split themselves. It was a battalion that split themselves, and part of them deployed into Afghanistan for the exit out of Afghanistan, and they were actually on the very last flight out of Afghanistan that called the end of the U.S.'s involvement officially in Afghanistan. And the other half of the battalion was on the inbound portion in the other part of the world, actually receiving the Afghani folks that were being evacuated, and they were doing the receiving. Really fascinating. We have this amazing picture of the folks that were coming out of Afghanistan on the very last C-17, sitting in the back of the C-17 on the floor. Hundreds of soldiers just kind of piled in there, leaving. Is really amazing. So they had a very productive deployment, several challenges, but they really did well. The Army Aviation, the helicopters, they're going out the door next weekend. They're leaving for a year on a medevac mission. That's what they do, is medevac, and they're leaving next weekend, not tomorrow, but the following weekend for a year. The Air Guard, I can't say enough. You're well aware that the Air Guard deployed to Europe. They did that 90 days after coming out of being declared operationally ready. So they're just newbies coming out of it, and they were tasked to deploy in theater to support NATO in the perimeter efforts of supporting, the Ukraine effort. With that, the interesting thing is, compared to their active duty counterparts that they backfilled behind, they did it with 100 less people and took 4 less cargo aircraft to get them there. They've developed this whole process where they're multi-utilization of the airmen. So you may be a crew chief, but you're doing something else. You may be an electrician and you're crewing or you're fueling, so they've taken and made the airmen multidiscipline airmen. With that, they were able to actually deploy with less, and actually in the process of, because they did that, they were able to, the unit actually ended up in multiple detachment locations around Europe, So they'd have a couple of aircraft farmed out in different places, and they were able to take a smaller footprint to that bare base location for them and support that aircraft and generate that aircraft. So really dynamic deployment, great experience. Your Air Guard, I mean, your National Guard, quite frankly, you know, General Knight and myself, other than the normal working with the legislature and focused on recruiting, one of our primary focuses as of late has really been around supporting all aspects of all veterans in the state of Vermont. And with that, we're currently working on an effort with Delta Dental to bring dental care to underserved veterans. We're working on that. There's a huge effort around toxic exposure, burn pits, all other toxics, all the way to include as far back as Vietnam and Agent Orange. The veteran, you know, Department of Veterans Affairs has, our Congress has approved a whole new process about providing benefits to folks that have those exposures. And we're very involved in that. A matter of fact, next Tuesday, in conjunction with the governor, there's going to be a whole public service announcement done, letting people know that this benefit is out there and what to do, and encouraging people to get the help they need. Obviously, we're always focused on soldier and airman wellness, and we're really always focused. And again, this goes back to the charitable foundation, the whole family support and wellness piece of things. And also for you guys, something near and dear to your heart, I think it will be, is your amazing assistance in helping us move the memorial. Well, the next piece of that is going to happen. We actually got, through Senator Leahy, we actually got federal funding to build a pavilion on the walkway, a beautiful pavilion on the walkway to that memorial. So, which will be really an amazing capstone to that whole setting. So those are just a few of the things going on. We're busy every day, but it's because of folks like you helping us and supporting us, and we really appreciate that.
No, thanks, Ken. I appreciate that's good. It's good for me to get that update. It's connected. I try to stay connected with what's going on out there as much as possible, but you tend to lose touch as the further you get away from your retirement. But and what Ken said there, as far as the Guard goes, that's the definition of what we do at the Guard. We do more with less, and that's the, you know, in simple terms, the number I always like to give is, when I was there, and I think it's still true today, that if you look at the total, what just the Air Guard does for the Air Force, we do about 30% of the Air Force mission in the Air Guard. So if you took all the jobs that there are out there in the Air Force, the Air Guard does about 30% of all of the Air Force's mission. And we do it with about 7% of the Air Force budget. So 7% of the budget, and we do 30% of the mission. So wow. There's a lot of reasons how that works. And one of them is, you know, and that's one of the reasons why the foundation exists. You know, if you look at active duty people, it's a very expensive proposition, because they have, their bases are large. They have a lot of support systems on their bases. You know, they're thousands of acres. On the Air Force side of things, they have runways, they have commissaries, daycares, churches, you name it, all kinds of, you know, shopping centers on all these bases. Well, if you look at what we have at the Air Guard, we have about a 220 acre base. The city owns the runway. We don't pay for that. And we have essential services to do the mission. We don't have all the ancillary stuff that you have on an active duty base. The shopping centers and the commissaries and the hospitals and that kind of thing. So a lot of our support comes from the community, which is exactly what you guys do. You know, it's we're part of the community. We live in the community. and we get our support through the community. And that's where the foundation comes in. We kind of take the place of a lot of the things that fall through the cracks that you can't get, that our active duty counterparts take as normal. So it's a very complicated system, but it seems to work. And with the Vermont National Guard Charitable Foundation, we're in very good shape financially at this point. The last couple of years have been interesting. With all of the pandemic relief that's out there, a lot of our cases have been taken care of by other means. We have had some requests for support, and we've been meeting those. But a lot of our, there's been so much other support out there during the pandemic time that we've seen a decrease in our cases. But that's not a reason to kind of get complacent, because what we're expecting, and it's starting to happen already, is we're seeing as pandemic relief is waning, is gone away, and I'm talking about unemployment support and all that kind of thing. We're starting to see an uptick in requests for support from us, which is what we anticipated. So, and with the upcoming deployments that we have, we fully anticipate this next year to see a rise in cases of where we need to support the soldiers and airmen. If not just the Vermont National Guard, we also support any active duty military members that happen to still have family or be from Vermont and that request support. But 99% of our cases are usually support Vermont National Guard members, Air or Army Guard. We recently have brought on Adam Rice as our president. He replaced Joel Clark. Joel Clark is now fully retired, and he stepped away from the foundation. And Adam Rice is on now as our president. He followed in Joel Clark's footsteps as a civil engineer and running our engineering department on the base for many years. And now Adam is our director of staff, working directly with Ken Gregg and General Knight over at Camp Johnson on Air Guard specific, mostly Air Guard issues and joint issues. We have brought some young blood into our foundation. As some of us are getting older, we have brought in a couple of younger folks, which is what we are constantly looking for to make sure that the foundation stays active and stays viable. Because none of us are going to be around forever. So we want to make sure that the foundation still is an active, engaged, and relevant organization. So how do we do it? We do it by organic, I call it, organic fundraising, if you will. We don't actively fundraise. We have in the past done it one time in about the 18 years that I know of, when we had to go active on fundraising, but most of the fundraising we do is passive. It just comes from word of mouth, and it comes from organizations such as ECI that we're on your radar, and you understand what's going on with us and what's going on with the community and the military members, and you choose to make the donations that you do, and that's how we stay funded. And some of it is bake sales from Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts to larger companies making us a part of their annual giving campaigns. So it's everything in between. So thank you for what you do, and thank you for your support. We always, one thing we do in the Guard is we love to tell our story. We always say we're the best kept secret out there. People, they know we're there. Some people know we're there. A lot of people don't. They don't really understand what goes on with there's about 4,000 members of the Guard, and we're out there in every community in the state. Yet there's a lot of people, we quietly go about doing our job, and a lot of people don't understand what's going on. So if you ever have any questions, or you ever want to see what's behind the fence, don't hesitate to give us a call, and we'll set it up. We love to give tours and when we can. and give people, bring companies on, bring organizations in. We have a very active program that interacts with a lot of our civilian companies and people in the community that are movers and shakers. And we make sure that there's a constant line of communication between the Guard and our community, which is what we're a part of. So any questions, anything you want while you got us on?
Any questions out there? I guess I'll say that we're proud to be part of your community, and we're proud of the Vermont National Guard.
Well, thank you. And we do pass that on when we're to the guys and gals in the trenches.
Okay. Well, hopefully you'll stick around and listen to the rest of our presentation. Brad, in a minute here, will be giving an update on a project he's worked on.
Thanks.
Okay.
Appreciate
you.
it. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. And I'm going to take over the screen here, Matt. Okay, can you see my screen? All right.
We got it.
So not only is Brad Pasker giving the presentation in a minute, he's also ECI's newest superintendent. So congratulations, Brad, for your new promotion.
Thank you, Ken.
And a couple quick things here. There's a Morgan Stanley financial advisor coming the week of February 3rd, or the morning of February 3rd. So check with Ursula to make an appointment. And be sure that you're, this is a comment passed to me yesterday from Phil Payne next door from Vermont Wholesale Lumber. Be sure to secure your vehicles and personal belongings while parking around the shop and yard. They had an incident last week, and someone just walked in and stole a wallet out of one of their workers' cars. So be aware of that. That kind of stuff can happen. Lock your vehicles. Make sure you don't have, personal belongings in there that could get stolen. And also, as we indicated last week, starting in 2023, all proceeds from the ECI sweatshirt and t-shirt sales will be donated to the Mike Lawyer Foundation. Last year, we had $8,956 donated to the UVM Cancer Research through this program. And then we have our summary of the results from the employee giving last year. Actually, I think I'm not showing pictures here. Let me change download pictures. With that'll now show up on your screen. Do you see the screen and see the images now?
We do. You might want to
Okay.
just enlarge a little bit, Ken.
Yep, I will open it up a bit. Okay, is that a little better?
Perfect. Yep.
There we go. All right. Okay, so moving on here. The primary wellness program. So as Beth talked about a minute ago, we have a link here so you can enroll in that program. Upcoming weather, nothing spectacular right now. A little more snow in the forecast now, so I think later next week it's going to get a lot colder for a couple days. And we'll have Brad present the project of the week. Do you want to take over the screen, Brad, or you want me to navigate?
I'll let you scroll that, Ken, and I have it up on another screen, so I'll keep
Okay,
reading.
I'll scroll the top here and let you get started.
All right, ECI is contracted with VTrans on the Clarendon-Wallingford VTRY 38 to 44 and Manchester VTRY 27 to 31 projects. These two separate railroad bridge rehab contracts that involve 8 different bridges. At this time, ECI has completed all structural steel installation and rivet replacement, including a complex double 4-beam bottom flange replacement, which utilized that bonus shutdown we mentioned last week. In total, ECI crews installed 4,510 pounds of steel in Clarendon, Wallingford, and 10,603 pounds of steel in Manchester. Our largest single piece of structural steel was only 460 pounds, and the smallest was 13 pounds, with most pieces under 100 pounds. The total quantities of most of these rehab and strengthening projects don't do the work justice. In other words, there's a lot of labor that goes into it before you get to hang 1 pound of steel. In total, ECI crews removed 1,268 rivets in Clarendon, Wallingford, and 2,300 rivets in Manchester, and replaced each rivet with a high-strength 7/8 diameter bolt. So in Clarendon, Wallingford,
Did that advance okay?
you could scroll up a little bit more, Ken.
Okay, went a little too far. There's where you left off, right?
Oh, yep, there we go. Prior to any structural steelwork or rivet replacement, subcontractor Minoco out of Florida, who we've used on Sharon projects in St. Johnsbury, mobilized and abated the required locations of lead-based paint and obtained the required surface profile for the steel fang surfaces. A properly prepared fang surface, free of dirt, paint, rust, and a slightly textured surface is required to transmit the 40,000-pound tensile force of each bolt into the fang surface and gain additional capacity via friction of the mated surfaces. In other words, modern steel connections utilize friction between connected steel pieces. The bolts are used to provide the clamping force to achieve this friction. When tensioned, these simple shear connections do not rely on bearing on the bolt itself to transfer the load. On these contracts, an SP3 power tool surface profile was all that was needed as opposed to a blasted surface. Minoco also painted many of these bridges in high corrosion zones, such as floor beam to girder connections, horizontal gusset plates, and girder ends near the bearings. There'll be some pictures of the painted surfaces below.
Yep. I'll roll up slowly. I can either go real fast or real slow. So there we go. Oops, took off too far on me here. I'll back up a little bit. There you go. Is that good?
That works. So there's two bridges that span unnamed drainage areas in an agricultural area of Clarendon. Bridges 98 and 96 were limited to replacing rivets with A325 bolts that connected the floor beam to the girder. Rivets on these bridges were roughly 3 3/4 inches long, going through 5 layers of steel. And so here's a rivet, and this is what we're removing. It's goes in hot, and then the head is peened over to form a double-headed rivet. We remove that and then put in a structural bolt.
The rivet comes out hot too, doesn't it?
It does come out very hot. That particular rivet was sheared off because of access, but
okay.
Generally they come out melted with torched holes through the center of them.
Yep. Very cool.
So each floor beam had 13 or 14 rivets, depending on the bridge, that were removed at each floor beam connection.
So it's 5 plies of steel there.
Mm-hmm. And as they get longer, they get trickier to remove.
Right.
And
Okay, Bridge 93.
All right. Bridge 93, the only truss bridge on the project, which we focused on the precast shutdown last week. It had a small steel scope that included replacing a small section of damaged truss bottom cord member and a cover plate installed under the bridge plaque. This bridge spans an overflow channel adjacent to the Mill River, and the damage is assumed to be from floating debris from a previous flood event, being that it's on the upstream side of that truss. The bent angle was cut out with an abrasive wheel, and a new angle with splice plates was installed. So the engineers were concerned about damaging the steel to remain, so we had to submit a plan of how we were going to remove it carefully. So an abrasive wheel was selected, and a shim plate placed behind the cut if any overcut was possible. You can see it's just a flange angle there, and below it is the mark out for the cut and the splice, just to make sure the cuts were in the right spot before we went and cut it apart.
Right.
And this work is tricky because you don't know exactly when a train is going to be coming. You have a good idea, and so you got to schedule that because there's no way a train can pass over that until the repair is completed.
Bridge 89.
Bridge 89 over the Otter Creek received new floor beam bottom cover plates. Cover plates were shop drilled with the proper bolt pattern, allowing crews to simply clamp the plate in place and mag drill into the floor beam bottom flange. Rivet replacement was done on the cross braces as well. So you can see here where the crews were using a floating dock to move around underneath the bridge, as opposed to sometimes we'll do a fully decked hanging system under a bridge. But the limited scope didn't make sense to deck everything. We just moved progressively down the bridge with these docks. Worked really well.
Bridge 87.
Structural steel on Bridge 87 required the removal of track panels to access the built-up stringers. 26 new galvanized angles were installed to replace angles with significant section loss. Each interior floor beam had a bottom cover plate installed as well to increase the load rating of the bridge. One challenging element of Bridge 87 was that the bottom of steel was only about 36 inches above the water of the Homer Stone Brook. So as opposed to bridges many feet in the air, this one was in some spots only 2 feet, 3 feet in the air. And it was a different kind of challenge that we had. So you can see the
So you
first
worked from the
picture.
top versus the bottom. You worked from the top versus the bottom, I guess, right?
Yeah. And so the track crew came and panelized for us. And then here you can see Jason is torching out a rivet at that floor beam connection in order to put a bolt in and later disassemble everything. So the yellow paint is parts of the bridge to be replaced. And the next picture is a pre-con photo taken. And the last photo was just probably a couple weeks ago, I think. And you can see the water came up during the winter rain that we've been having, but it shows the bottom angles installed and the bottom cover plate.
Yeah, I'm scrolling along as quick as I can.
Oh no.
There we go. It's a bottom cover plate. It looks pretty sharp. I like it when you see all the new galvanized components all assembled and fastened on.
Yeah, it does look good. Yeah.
Yep.
These bridges are like 100 years old, right, Brad?
Yeah, they are. A lot of these were from like 1905, 1910. So the next group is on to the Manchester contract. So just a little bit further down the track, but separate contract. All three Manchester bridges span the Battenkill, a famous trout fishery. Bridge 74 had a small number of angles to be replaced, but the location of two floor beam bottom flange angles required 2 bays of built-up stringers to be removed. Floor beam angles only had 170 or 160 rivets to remove for the angle itself. However, to replace those 2 angles, an additional 872 incidental rivets were removed. This required 8 stringers to be disassembled and removed from the bridge. All rivets were removed pre-shutdown. The double crew worked a bonus shutdown, which started with track panel removal on a Friday afternoon, steelwork Saturday morning through Sunday afternoon, and by Sunday at dusk, the bridge was back together for a Monday train. So this was, in a way, a different style shutdown than the precast work we had been doing. but we generally had the same crew that was doing precast work and steel work throughout the project. So we worked from both ends simultaneously in order to break everything down and get that steel installed, and it went really good. Everybody
No,
did what they needed to, and
Brad, this is a good point to point out that kind of the terminology. This is a through girder. The girders are obviously on the end, span the entire length, abutment to abutment, and the floor beams that you're talking about are the cross members that they're working on, and then the stringers are the ones that run between the floor beams.
yeah, so you can see they're on the bottom of the first picture, the guys are disassembling the 4 angles in the web plate. So this was before rolled beams were even
Right.
produced. Everything was built up and riveted together. So that's what makes all this work so labor intensive to get out one component of steel. If you scroll down, you can see the new floor beam angle that was installed. Nice 6-inch by 6-inch 3/4 galvanized angle. And
Right, you
everything
had to
was,
pull all that apart to get that in, huh?
yeah, and everything was
A lot.
set in place, transfer punched, and then mag drilled in the field to reduce the templating and potential issues measuring bolt hole to bolt hole. So we put it in place exactly where it needs to be, and then transfer punch and drill it in the field.
Yeah, you almost can't pre-measure this without taking it all apart.
No, no, and then you're halfway there.
Yep.
In the last picture, the guys are assembling the new steel with some old components. This bridge we actually worked on in 2017, replacing some structural steel as well as the precast back wall that you can see in that photo. So it was interesting to go back to a bridge we already worked on.
Yeah, pretty cool.
You guys use the more with less thing like the guards do. I keep seeing the same guys doing all these different jobs.
Yeah, you really have to. I can't bring Ron's crew everywhere, and so I did have one of his really good track guys working with us, and worked out really well to have a hybrid crew throughout this project.
It's putting the bridge back together, it looks like.
Yeah, this is Sunday afternoon, getting a little dusky there, but we just set the panel and jointing the panels back together.
And Bridge 73.
Oh, Bridge 73 had a new cover plate installed on the bottom of each girder. So this bridge was a deck over girder. So the girders were tighter than the tie spacing, and then the deck was laid over top of that. So it's similar, but a little bit different. Much taller profile. The girders were about 6 foot tall. The cover plates were installed without holes and match drilled to the existing rivet hole pattern. Bottom cover plates on the through girder bridges are challenging to install because it's necessary to remove the fasteners, i.e. the rivets or the bolts, before installing and match drilling the new plate. Not only does this leave the existing plies of the bottom flange release to potentially fall, but the distribution of tension through the member changes and the whole misalignment can occur. The crew got plenty of experience doing similar work on larger girders during the 2019 Pittsford Proctor project and has a system of progressively clamping and drift pinning to keep things going awry. So here you can see the 4 plies of steel we were dealing with, one of which is an angle, and then 2 existing cover plates, and the bottom is the galvanized cover plate that we installed via
My screen
match
stopped
drilling.
advancing.
Oh,
My screen stopped. I get the little circle spinning there. Hopefully, and my screen went a little bit, light shaded. So say it's not
Froze up.
responding right now is what it's telling me, but hopefully it'll recover here in a moment.
All right. I'll keep talking. I'll talk about Bridge
Okay.
71 as it catches up.
Okay.
Bridge 71 had the. I'll wait for you to catch up, I guess. There we go. Yep. So you can see the multiple plies there, and a clamp holding everything together. So we worked the plate from one end to the other, bringing it into just a clamped connection surface until we were able to get it all clamped and start mag drilling down.
Matt, can you take over? I'm not.
Yep, I am, Ken. Brad, you want me to go down?
Sure. Yep. Yeah, Bridge 71 is just below that. All right.
There you go.
Bridge 71 had the highest weight of steel installed at 7,698 pounds, comprised of floor beam cover plates, lateral bracing, and gusset plates. Cross braces were built in halves and slung under the bridge to reduce the required work window. Crews used we used the floating work platforms to access the underside of this bridge, allowing fast setup and moving between bays. So here you can see this was not for the steel work, but he's just welding an H-pile splice for jacking of the bridge required for the precast and bearing installation. So working in waders in the somewhat shallow batten kill there. And in this photo, you can see the new cross braces installed, and right now the guys are torquing up or fully tensioning the bolts, as we call it. And what they're using is a rechargeable torque gun that's rated for 1,000 foot-pounds, and it collapses these little bumps on a direct tension indicators. And on the back, this orange silicone squirts out to indicate you're at full tension. So a combination of that special washer and the torque gun is what gets you the full tension and the full strength of your bolts. And that's what we have.
Very good. Thank you. That Brad, that was really informative and well presented. And I mean, you did all this entirely, all the text and everything with minor edits, and I appreciate it and did a good job. So we'll be looking forward to the bearing chapter on this now from Brad or somebody there from the crew.
I think I'll kick that to Alec or Ken, who was more involved in the bearing installation than I was.
Yeah, okay. Well,
He's
it should
He's
be
a
very
superintendent
interesting.
now, so now he's going to delegate it to one of his other guys.
Delegate.
Other guys.
Right.
Voluntold.
Delegate. So for the project archives there, I have the Grand Isle North Hero drawbridge back in 2008 when we were doing some steel replacement on that structure. The old structure been removed now by the project Chinbro's been doing. So that's what we got here. Phil Murdoch,
Dan.
thank you for attending. Anyone else? Everybody else? Thank you. Be safe out there. Matt, give it the wrap up here.
Thank you all. Great way to start off the day. Let's really finish it strong now. And if you watch the group setting, please let me know so you can capture attendance, and let's be safe today. Let's have a great day.
Okay,
Thank
take
you all.
care.
Carry on.
Bye.